Hey, peace, peace, peace. What's going on? What's happening? What's up? This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. Today, I want to get on the topic about Charles L. Rising. So, one of the reasons why I chose to talk about Charles L. Rising or present some information about him is because uh, my primary focus is on the Haitian people. So just last week, I did something about Little Haiti and its founder, um, Victor Jesuit. So Victor Jesuit and Little Haiti, I did something on that subject. So today I'm going to focus on Charles L. Rising. So his last name is pronounced as Rising. Okay. He was of a Haitian descent. His parents was from Haiti. They escaped during the time of the Haitian Revolution and came to America in New York, and that's where he was born. So he became a college professor, and not only the first, but he was an educator, a linguist, a mathematician. So this man carried so many belts. By him being the first of African descent, a black person to hold these positions, right, or being one of the first, it made more room and opportunity for other blacks to be able to get involved into the fields of study, especially in the STEM. So I'm doing this only because, again, a lot of people feel like they have this misconception about the Haitian people, like the Haitian people didn't do anything or they didn't play any type of contribution into the American society or anything like that. But they was around for quite a long time, right? It was around for a long time. So they have done something. They have played some part into the American culture. All right. They have played some part into the black community. All right. So that's what I want to do. I want to put my focus on that today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and present some information. And once again, I want to give a special shout out and thank everybody that has been subscribed to the channel, the people that have shared the channel, hit the notification bell, and all that great stuff. I want to thank you guys for that. I really appreciate that a lot. That really means so much. Thank you for watching. So yes, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so the source that I am going to present, which I recommend a lot of people to go to, is the blackpast.org. So you guys can find information on here and you can be able to share this information. So BlackPast have a lot of valuable information, have a lot of great information about African American or just global African history, period, in general. So let's go ahead. So right here, it says Charles Louis Rising. And he was born on July 21st, 1818 in New York City. His parents, Miguel and Elizabeth Rising, were immigrants from Haiti who arrived in the United States shortly after the Haitian Revolution of 1793. His parents emphasized the importance of education, and very early on, the young Rising displayed an aptitude for mathematics. When he was a student at New York African Free School, Verizon began his teaching career when he was 14 years old. He saved what he could of his teacher's $25 per year salary to continue his own education with tutors. A political activist and abolitionist, Rising played a prominent role in the Negro Convention movement in New York. In 1837, Rising joined Henry Highland Garnet, among others, in an effort to gain voting rights for African American men, and he was later one of the co-authors of the call for the New York Negro Convention of 1840. I'm just going to stop there. And I would like to highlight this. I'm just going to highlight it. So right there in that paragraph, here it is. Oops. Hold on. All right, here it is. You got a man that's a prominent figure in the Black community. Not only has earned his degree, but he was involved in the Negro Convention movement, which fought for African American males to vote during that time period. Okay, but here we got the FBA coming along telling you some bullshit, and the ADOS telling you some bullshit, and not being totally aware of history. It's all around you. Okay, here's a man who put himself on the line, and what does it say? He joined Henry Highland Garnet, among others, in effort to gain voting rights. Okay, he gained voting rights for African Americans. During this time period, let me tell y'all something. There was no distinguish between if you was Haitian, Jamaican, African American, Bahamian, whatever. As long as you was a Negro, you was a Negro. That's just what it was. You was a Negro. And so he understood that by him being a Negro, regardless of the fact that his parents came from Haiti and they came over here to this country and gave birth to him, that didn't change anything. That didn't change his status. That didn't change his circumstance as a Black person. That didn't change none of that. So he knew what he had to do. He knew what he had to go up against. So this is why he ended up joining forces with people like Henry Garnet to be able to give some type of pathway for African Americans to be able to vote and be able to sustain some form of education during that time in New York. And then for those of you that don't know, New York did have slavery. New York had slavery. However, the slavery in New York did not last as long as it did in the South. Okay? So slavery eventually had ended in the North. But in the South, it was a continuation until the Civil War came into place. And you also got to remember, there was two United States. You got the United States, which was the northern part, and the southern part was Confederate States of America. So it was two Americas, the United States and the Confederate States of America. Okay. Let's go. All right. So Rising's philosophy of education was founded on the presumption that industrial education, manual arts, was a pivotal. Excuse me. Let me read that again. Rising's philosophy of education was founded on the presumption that industrial education, manual arts, was a pivotal means to African American freedom. Unlike Booker T. Washington, however, Rising saw the importance of both industrial and classical education and even started a normal school, teachers training college in New York City. When the predominantly white Free Mission College later renamed New York Central College, opened in Cortland County, New York in 1849, it admitted Black students and hired Rising to serve on the faculty. In so doing, Rising became the first African American to teach at a predominantly white college. The magnitude of Rising's appointment can be measured against the fact that prior to 1840, no more than 15 Black students had attended white colleges. Rising was a professor of belles lettres, Greek, Latin, French, and adjunct professor of mathematics at Central College. Was joined by two other African American scholars in 1850, which was Joy B. Baston and William Allen. After 3 years at Central College, Rosin left to assume the position of principals at the Institute of Color Youth in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Founded in 1837, it was one of the best schools for African Americans in the country. Rosin increased student enrollment, expanded the library holdings, and exposed the student to outstanding African American intellectuals and leaders of that time. Rosin remained at the Institute for Colored Youth for 3 years and then returned to New York, where he became an administrator of schools in New York City. One of the high points of his career as a New York City educator was in leading the fight in 1873 to end racial segregation in the city's public school. What was his fight? It was to end racial segregation. Okay? A prolific writer, Rosin wrote political journalism as well as poetry. His most noted poems are Freedom, The Spirit Voice, and Silent Thoughts. Charles Rosin died in 1893. All right, so that information came from blackpast.org. All right. Let's see what other information I can find regarding to this. So let's go on WikiOne. Let's see what else they have to say, because it might be some additional information. All right. All right, so that's him. As you can see, that's him. He was very fair skinned. That's Charles Rosin. Okay. Now let's see what else we can find on here. And did y'all know the Institute for Colored Youth was named Cheyney University of Pennsylvania? I did a video about Cheyney University, so you can go back into my archive and look it up. Okay. So down here it says Rosin returned to New York, where he served for decades in public education as teacher, administrator, and reformer. He was a principal for Colored Grammar School number 2 on 41st Street. During this time, he was instrumental in effort to abolish slavery and segregation. He was a delegate to the Colored Labor Convention held in Saratoga Springs, New York in 1870. He successfully lobbied for passage of an 1873 statute to integrate New York's public schools. However, in 1876, he was the head of New York City's colored public school. He was politically active in many communities groups. In the presidential election of 1884, he was a candidate for electoral college, at the moment a politically important position on the Republican ticket. Now, I know many of you may wonder, well, why so many black people was Republican back then? Because that's where they got their opportunity at as Republicans. They didn't, at that time period, when the Democratic Party came into existence, that's when Andrew Jackson came. Yeah, that's when Andrew Jackson came around. So when Andrew Jackson came around, that's when the Democratic Party came into existence, and a lot of black people weren't able to get on the Democratic board like that because there was a lot of racism from the Democratic Party. They didn't want black people on there. So they didn't start accepting black people as Democrats until later on. But in the very beginning, most of the blacks that you will find that has done a lot of work in the black community, that was abolitionists, that was educators, that was fighting for people's right to vote, that was professors, anybody in these particular fields, you will find out that most of them were Republican. Even those who were politicians, we talking about in the 1800s. These people were Republicans. Okay? Now, the black people that are Republicans today, they ain't got shit on these individuals. They not even doing as nearly as these black people. Okay? These black Republicans got a whole nother agenda. But these, however, people during Charles' time period that was in that particular political party, they joined those political party just so they can be able to get involved in the politics and get their people involved. They did a lot more work. So a lot of stuff that we have today as black people, it was put up a fight by those black people that were Republicans. But one day I will put the focus on black Republicans, right? I'll give a list of the ones back in the time period, and then I will go from there. So give a long list of all the black Republicans and what they have done, etc. So I will have to make arrangements. A lot of stuff that I want to be able to get into. So it's a lot of information out there. It just, again, you got to take the time, initiative to do your own diligent research and look up stuff. It's out there. You got to look up the information. It's available. All right. Okay, so anyways, it says in 1878 he owned a brownstone at 242 East 53rd Street. It was filled with books. He was described as a remarkably well-read man and speaks several languages. He is said to be worth $60,000, equivalent to $1,609,034 in 2020. After the public schools in New York City were desegregated, he became principal of grammar school number 80 at 252 West 42nd Street, although suffering two strokes, one in 1885 and one in 1890, that left him physically incapacitated. Reason continued at his post until he retired some 5 months before his death. And it says Reason was also a poet. He contributed to the Color American in 1830s and was a leader of New York City's Phoenix Society in 1840. He wrote the poem Freedom, which celebrated the British abolitionist Thomas 1849 biography of Clarkson. And let's go down where it says marriage and family. Not much documentation has been found on Rising's personal life, but he was said to have been married and widowed 3 times. His third and final wife was Clarice Esteve. She passed away in 1884. Whom he married in New York City on July 17th of 1855. They had no children, although she had a daughter from her previous marriage to John Lucien Esteve, a French West Indian confectioner, restaurateur, and caterer in New York City. Rising suffered 2 strokes, which after a recovery period required him to go to work in a carriage as he could not walk. He retired 5 months before his death. He died in his 53rd Street home in New York City in 1893. The cause of his death was specified as Bright's disease. His estate was estimated at $30,000. So there's further readings, and here are the reference at the bottom. All right. The reference is at the bottom. Okay. And again, that all right. So you might wonder, well, why am I pronouncing it as rising? Because the fact that he's Haitian, came from the Haitian background, it may spell as reason, but it might be a French pronunciation. So I'm assuming the pronunciation is raisin versus reason. So that's why I pronounced it that way. I could be wrong about that pronunciation. It probably is pronounced as reason, or might be pronounced as rising. Um, Other than that, that's all the information I have available for today. So thank you guys. For those of you that are watching, I really appreciate that. And for those of you that has subscribed to my channel, I thank you for that. And you guys make sure that you share the channel, hit the notification bell whenever I come on. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all later. All right. So I'll come back with some more interesting information. Until then, this your girl Tiffany, and I'm getting ready to log off. And for those that's just coming in, you'll have to watch the video from the very beginning, and just to see what the subject is about and what I'm talking about, etc. All right, then. So y'all take it easy. This your girl Tiffany, and I'll connect with y'all later. All right, peace.